MJ, you ready to go?
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. I believe it's still morning, regardless of where you are in the country. But if not, good afternoon to you as well. Welcome to the Ladies First Breaking Barriers, the virtual chat hosted by the Dallas Cowboys and powered by EverFi. I want to give a very special thank you to Charlotte Jones. She's the Executive Vice President and Chief Brand Officer for the Dallas Cowboys, of course, for bringing us all together today in recognition of Women's History Month. So we still got all of today, all of tomorrow too, but as everyone on this call knows, Women's History Month should be sort of an everyday occurrence, right? My name is MJ Acosta Ruiz. I am the host of NFL Total Access on the NFL Network. I have been with the network for just completed my third season, but I have been a journalist, specifically a sports journalist, for over 10 years now. Started my career in Miami in my native language of Spanish, reporting for local sports, high school sports, international sports, you name it. I have done it. I have covered it. And now I get to hang with all of you this morning to talk about the incredible history that not just myself, but the panelists that you'll meet in just a bit have sort of learned to really love and what we've contributed to the world of sports specifically, but beyond that as well. So the month of March, of course, is a time we celebrate and honor the importance of women, their great accomplishments, and the impact that have made on the world and the communities all year round. So the group of women joining us today are history makers, without question, and are here to share all of their stories with you. So I also want to give a special shout out to all the students and all of the teachers who have joined us today. We have Molina High School, Sunset High School from Dallas. By the way, I graduated from a Sunset High School, but this was in Miami. But still, for today, I'll say a Sunset High alum for sure. And of course, Shickley Public School all the way from Nebraska as well. So we have so many of you here from across the board, all over the country. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. We're so happy to have you here. I mean, this has been sort of one of the beautiful things we've been able to glean through this time of change and crisis here in our country, that there's still unity even while we're separated. Through the magic of technology. So we're so glad we can connect with you, even if it is through our screens, but I don't know that we'd be able to do so otherwise for sure. All right, so I want to get to the part that I love, and it's to introduce the incredible women that we have with us today. Our panelists are just out of this world. It is an honor to be among them today. First, of course, Dallas Cowboys Executive Vice President and Chief Brand Officer, Ms. Charlotte Jones. And the first Black female coach in the NFL with the Washington football team, Jennifer King, is with us this morning as well. From NFL on Fox, my colleague, sister in sports broadcast, Laura Okeem, is here too with us. And last but not least, the first woman to play in a Power 5 football game over at Vanderbilt University, Sarah Fuller. She is joining us with a pre-taped segment here. She'll be joining us throughout the day with some messages for us. She can't be with us live because she has to be in class. Very important, as all of you know, to make sure that you can't miss class. Sarah knows that full and well. So before we get to more of our program, I want to make sure that I give each of the panelists here a moment to introduce themselves. Ms. Charlotte, can you start us off, please?
Now it just went to me. Why don't you go to the TV studio and see and text me there's nothing in there. Text me and see what the status is.
Okay, so as is typical, of course, in pandemic Zoom times, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're going to get that squared away. I'm sure any and all of you who have been part of this have experienced it, right? The Zoom goes out, the call goes out, This is what we've been working with for the past year. Part of the magic is also dealing with part of the technical glitches. But while we get all of this sorted out, let me tell you a little bit about sort of my journey in sports broadcast, how I made it all the way to the NFL Network. Um, for the students on here, I was not one of those people who knew exactly what they wanted to do when I was still in high school. It took me quite a bit to figure it out. But I think that when you're aligned, one passion leads you to another. That's what happened with me. I've been a dancer my whole life, and my passion for dance ultimately led me to journalism and to TV broadcast. And after that point, I did not look back. I've worked very hard over the past 10 years, started in Miami, went to San Diego, worked locally until I got an opportunity to get to the national platform. And now I can broadcast live to all of your homes throughout the nation. I've been able to do international work as well, which has been amazing. All right, it seems like everybody is here and everybody can hear. I'll just get a quick thumbs up from all of our panelists. Y'all can all hear me? Amazing. Yes, great. Okay, so I'll kick it over to Miss Charlotte Jones so she can tell us a little bit more about her story and her journey.
Yes, well, thank you, MJ. And I think that just shows what a rock star you are to be able to take our technical difficulty and turn it into something amazing by sharing your incredible story with our audience today. And this is just a delight for me to be sharing this moment with so many people that I admire. And, you know, when I look back on my own career, I never thought I would be in a room full of these fabulous people, fabulous women. There certainly weren't women in the space that looked like these women, and there just were not women in the space. And I didn't actually grow up thinking my life would be in football. I had a journey early on. I believe that I was always a seeker. I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas, and I grew up in a rather small town, if you compare it to Dallas, and in a pretty sheltered environment in a private school. And I quickly realized that there should be something more to life than the homogenous nature of where I was growing up. And I switched schools to the largest public school in Arkansas for high school. My parents were completely supportive of the move. It quickly was the reverse of that. And I found myself to be the minority in the room, as opposed to the classroom that I had left. And it was probably in that move that I learned the most about people, that I learned the most about courage. And I learned the most about my drive and the passion that I had to experience new worlds. And I quickly found myself out in California at Stanford University, had an amazing experience out there, left Stanford, went to Washington, D.C., worked for a congressman from Arkansas, again, in a very different kind of environment. A lot of people today ask me, what's the most challenging thing about being in the middle of a man's sport, if you will? And I always like to say that actually my bigger challenges came in Washington, D.C. That really was an environment that was not necessarily female friendly, but more importantly, it really challenged the character of who I was. I remember calling home, every night to my father and saying, "Oh my gosh, this is what happened to me today." And the only response on the other end of the line was, "This is what builds character. Hang in there. This is what builds character." And then all of a sudden, I get a call from my dad, and he says, "I'm going to buy the Dallas Cowboys, and I want you to come down here and hear me." And, kind of chuckling on the other end, I went down to Dallas and I said, "Dad, I know nothing about running a professional sports team." And he laughed and looked at me and he said, "Neither do I. I just want somebody around me that I can trust, somebody that I have confidence in, somebody that's going to burn the midnight oil, trying to figure out how to turn this team around. And I want you here." And so with that, I moved to Dallas and I found myself a broom closet at the Cowboys organization. I cleared it out. I made it into an office and I was like, okay, here I am. I saw my dad a few days later and literally asked him, "Okay, what do you want me to do?" And he said two things. He said, one, find a way to stop losing money. At the time, the Dallas Cowboys were underwater. That's why they were actually for sale in the first place. And he said, find a way to stop losing money. And whatever you do, don't tarnish the star. and that was it. So it was like off and running. And I think the greatest thing about my journey to today, as I look back, and it's been almost 30 years, I still think it's like, gosh, wasn't I that girl that wanted to go in fashion when I was in high school? And how did I end up in here? How did I was sitting out here looking at my window, watching these guys practice and trying to figure out how to enhance a very powerful brand. And now here I am. And I think it's just been an amazing journey. And I think it just shows what a little courage will do.
I love that. I mean, and it shows the true resilience, right? Where you're able to pivot, even if it's something you've never done before, but having the faith and really the latitude in front of you to say, you know what, I'm going to take this on head on. And really, I mean, the proof is in the pudding, right? Like you can see what it's turned into. I mean, no question. Okay, Jennifer, can you tell us a little bit about your story, please?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting journey for me. I have a background in college basketball. I actually grew up in a small town where sports were everything. So I started playing sports at a young age and ended up going to college to play basketball and softball. And, as typical college students, when you're ending your career, you want to know what's next for you. And I had the opportunity to play some basketball in Australia. And then I started coaching college basketball. So I was happy in basketball, but football had always been my favorite sport. I'd always loved it, always enjoyed playing it, but there wasn't a lot of opportunities for me in football. So I was content coaching basketball, but I started playing football when I got back and really fell in love with it and started coaching football at some middle school levels and high school levels. And long story short, sports have always been my passion. So I had to do several things to stay in coaching. So I was a police officer for a while and did some other random jobs to be able to continue to coach because I was part time. And ultimately, we had a lot of success at Greensboro College, and I was able to get a head coaching position at Johnson and Wales University in Charlotte. And throughout this whole time, I'd been playing football, coaching football, and it was pulling at me. And when I got my head coaching position, I was literally right beside the Carolina Panthers practice facility. My office was next door. So once again, football popped into my life, and I was able to attend the Women's Coaches Forum put on by Sam Rappaport with the NFL. And there, Coach Ron Rivera, who's the head coach of the Panthers, was an attendee. And I had to find a way to kind of shoot my shot and let him know who I was and where I was and that I was interested in football. And, at this time, we had become very successful where I was coaching. We had won a national championship and life was very comfortable. Life was good for me, but football was pulling at me. And after making the connection with him, I was able to go over for an internship, and I thought I would be there for 2 days, but I went in with the mentality to really bring something to the table and add value, even though I was only there for 2 days. And I turned 2 days into 4 months and was able to do that. And I went back to basketball, and ultimately I was able to go to Arizona with the Arizona Hotshots in the AAF. I got a call, and I left my basketball season in the middle of the year, which was tough for me. But to go after what you want, sometimes you have to take a chance and make a leap. And I got out of my comfort zone and made that move. And it was a great experience for me to get into football with Coach Rick Neuheisel and his staff. And ultimately, it ended in April of that next year. When I came back, Coach Rivera gave me a call again to let me know that I could come back to the Panthers when I did that. And it was a great opportunity for me. And I moved to the running back position at that time. I've been working with wide receivers and great experience, met a lot of great people, added value to the room once again. What are you bringing to the table? And I was able to do that. And when that internship ended, I was able to go to Dartmouth College, Coach Buddy Tevens, and work for his staff, working with the wide receivers and as an offensive assistant. And great experience there in college football. It's a totally different world than the NFL, but it was a fun experience, and we were able to win the Ivy League and have a lot of success there, and built a lot of connections, and really honed my coaching skills. And at that point, Coach Rivera had become the head coach in Washington, and when our season was over, he gave me a call and let me know he thought he had a full season internship for me, and I was able to interview and get the internship, and that was last season. And in January of this season, he let me know that I would be coming back for the upcoming season as a full-time assistant. So that's my long story short, but super excited to be here to chat with you guys. And just thanks for the opportunity.
The Cliff's Notes version of what I'm sure is a very, very in-depth journey for sure, Jennifer. All right, Laura, can you please tell us a bit about your story, please?
It's so hard to follow up both of those. I alternated between having this huge smile on my face and tearing up because I love both of those stories so much. And
I can really relate to Charlotte in terms of I was a seeker my whole life. I wasn't going for the courage that Charlotte was going for. I was going for the confidence, which I desperately needed because when I first said I wanted to be a sports broadcaster, which was about 30 years ago now, I was constantly told how crazy I was. And you should have a different dream because girls talking sports is crazy. And then suddenly it wasn't crazy. So I got my first job in Montgomery, Alabama, and I thought I had made it. I was doing what everyone said I couldn't do. And I remember the first night that I was working, I was doing my first interview, interviewing a head coach of a high school football team before a huge Friday night game. And boy, was I excited. I was standing there having a really proud moment, telling myself, you made it. And atta girl, atta go. And all of a sudden, as I'm having this wonderful moment, I see the coach walking up out of the building and he's holding a basketball and a football. And I didn't give it much thought. I was too busy having a really proud moment. And as he walked up, I went to shake his hand and he didn't move his hand and he just looked at me and he said, little girl, I just wanted to make sure you knew the difference between a football and a basketball. A basketball is round and a football is oblong. And I went from being on top of the world to having this really magnificent moment to all of a sudden realizing I hadn't made it at all. I wasn't at the top of anything. And it took me years as a woman in sports to get back to feeling on top of the world, to prove not to anybody but myself that I did belong. And now I'm the third longest tenured sideline reporter in NFL history, and I have a company for women in sports that helps give women something I needed when I was younger, confidence in my job and confidence in my life. And that's been the greatest part of my journey, going from that Montgomery, Alabama to right now at the NFL on Fox, is finding the confidence that I took a really long time to find. So I'm so honored to be here and I love hearing these journeys already.
Laura, you cut to the core of me. I mean, as a woman in broadcast, we stand on the shoulders of women like Laura and Pam Oliver and Lisa Salters. And I mean, the great thing is that the list actually goes on and it continues to build. So thank you all for what you've done and what you continue to build for the next wave and the next wave of that. All right, I want to jump right into our panel discussion because I know there are a lot of questions and a lot of things that we want to touch on here. So I'll start with this question, Jennifer, and I'll have you start us off. And actually, I think we have one more intro. To not forget Sarah Fuller. She did send us a message on her intro, so I'll have them play that for all of you.
Hey y'all, I'm Sarah Fuller at Vanderbilt University. I'm super excited to kind of get to answer some of your questions today. I'm with y'all. I have class, and that's really important class. But I'm really excited to get to share questions.
Of when there's a will, there's a way. She's in class, but she still managed to be here as well. All right, she's going to jump in here with some of her answers as well. But Jennifer, I'm going to start with you. How did it feel to be the first to have sort of that moniker now put on you, and what's meant for you in your role with the Washington football team and in the NFL?
It's been really interesting for me just because I set out on this journey just to be a football coach. I never thought about being first, and I never even thought about the ramifications of it. And I often tell the story when Coach told me about my promotion. I was excited and grateful. I just went right back to work doing what I was doing. I didn't call anybody or really anybody because I was so locked into what I was doing and set out to be a first. But I think it's something I'll look back on and really be proud of my accomplishments. But I think it's important, as you've heard so many times, not be the last. And I think the women now in the coaching ranks, we take it very seriously. We know that we're the representation that we didn't have. It's very important for us to do a really good job in our roles to groundwork for the future.
Great. We have a clip here from Sarah about what it's like for her to be the first.
It was really awesome. I'd never expected to be the first woman kicker in a Power 5 conference game, but it was really an amazing experience going out there and at the Mizzou Stadium and kicking and hearing my name and everyone cheering. It wasn't only Vandy fans, it was Mizzou fans, and you could kind of feel the energy in the arena that it was like the history had just been made. So that was a really amazing opportunity, and one that I don't take lightly. And I'm super excited to continue to bring positive light to women in sports.
A moment that brought together even fans on opposing sides of the game. I love that. Charlotte, this next question is for you. Who were some of the women role models you had while you were growing up?
Great. Is that better?
Yep.
Sorry, we're having such audio problems. But I actually this question's very powerful for me because Condoleezza Rice shared with me one time. She said, if you wait around for role models that look like you could still be waiting. And that was her story, is that her role models didn't were 70-year-old white men. And look what she did with her career and how she led this nation. And for me, so that looked very different from so much from a workplace or career standpoint. My role models were my parents. They were my mom. They were my grandparents, both of them, who my grandmothers were very strong Renaissance women in the day. They took care of the home, they took care of husband and family, and then they did the accounting for the business, and then they went home and started all over again. And they multitask. That they didn't wear a crown, they didn't have a medal, they didn't have an honor, but they did what needed to be done to let their home environment survive and support their husbands in a business role, to let them be successful too. So that was a very different kind of empowerment. And I think, I love the comments that you made about not just courage, but confidence. And I was very fortunate to be raised by two parents that probably had more confidence in me than I had in myself. And when you grow up in a house of boys, you're fighting for the mashed potatoes every night. So there's really no discrimination. Whoever gets there first wins. And so in that, I think I really was fortunate that they never saw gender. And so as I began, to explore my own world and my own goals, gender wasn't at the forefront for me. My father always told me, if you wanted to be president of the United States, you can go do it. And so I never thought any differently from that. And then when I got into the NFL, I had my fair share of challenges, a little bit like Laura, of like, okay, this is not exactly what Jerry said it would be. I have to overcome some of these obstacles. And my father was always incredibly supportive, because a lot of the meetings that I would encounter, they would kind of look past me and they said, well, when your dad wants to show up, then we'll have a discussion. And, my dad stood behind me the whole way. And he said, you just tell them if they don't talk to you, there will never be a discussion. And, I took that internally and I built with that confidence, and my father supported me through the whole journey. And I think the biggest part of that, he's along the step of the way, he told me, he's like, don't lose your own identity trying to be something that you're not. Be who you are because your voice is powerful. And that is what has kept me strong through every challenge and every debate that I've entered of just that inner voice of strength.
Oh, I love that. And I know they had confidence in you, but sometimes it's a little easier said than done to say out there, like, hey, I've got you. It's still you stepping forward and sort of putting the work in, right? And putting yourself out there and being vulnerable. So the courage part of it is very, very true, Miss Charlotte. Laura spoke about this a bit ago in her introduction about, the stereotypes that exist about women in the culture and especially in sports. And hey, do you know the difference between these two? Yes, of course I do. But there are also a lot of challenges. So we have a message here from Sarah about what it's like to face those challenges for her and overcome them as well.
I think one of the stereotypes, and is the reason I put play like a girl on the back of my helmet, is that, playing to be an insult. People, when I was a kid, it'd be like, oh, you ran like a good girl. And now that is, girls are really strong and fast and capable things, and I really want to change the narrative on that. Young girls stepping up and what they want, playing football, joining clubs, I think are really important, and just showing that playing field.
Yes, Sarah, exactly. And shifting that narrative, that connotation, that should have never happened, but here we are. And Laura, I want to bring you into the conversation here. What are some of the steps that you took from a young age that really paved the way to get you where you are now, right? And how did you overcome those adversities or challenges, like the one you shared with us earlier?
I think it was doing a lot of work on myself. I think for so many years I told other people's stories and I was so proud of that. But suddenly I realized I'm hiding behind other people's stories. And there was a reason I was very attracted and gravitated towards my business because I didn't have to focus on myself. I could focus on you. I could focus on your feelings and how you overcome adversity and what have you gone through, what struggles. And I never turned that to me. And so, what I would say is the biggest thing that I had to navigate weren't the voices that everybody else was saying. I had heard enough of that, like we all have. You're not good enough. You're nobody wants you here. Nobody cares about your opinion. Those voices are constantly getting in your ear. That didn't matter so much to me. The problem was my voice in my own head started to sound like those voices. So suddenly I was saying, maybe you don't know what you're talking about. Maybe nobody does want you. Maybe you're not that good. And so it took me until I was 40 years old when suddenly life suddenly hit me in the face and I couldn't just keep looking at everyone else's story. I had to start going, okay, you keep asking people how they've overcome and what adversity have they gone through and how did they get over this, and now what are you going to do about it? How are you going to get through this? And so I think that was the biggest thing that I had to learn how to do, and probably the genesis of why I created a company for younger women was because I wasn't supposed to get that confidence until I was 40, not a minute before. That was my journey. But I always think, well, what if I had that at 18? What if I had that at 15? What if I had that at 25 or 35? I would have been unstoppable. And so my hope is always to make sure when I talk to young women or women my age who haven't done the work on themselves is to make sure that we're turning our voices into the most positive, empowering, most supportive voices that we've ever heard. Because if I put a thought bubble over my head when I was younger and you could read what my thought was, you would be like, wow, Laura's not very nice to herself, is she? She's pretty hard on herself. And now if you could read my head, I'm telling myself how great I am. I'm telling myself I'm good, not good for a girl. I'm good. And I think that was the biggest thing, was making sure that the voice in my head became the most supportive and empowering voice out of anybody's. And that took a lot of time for me.
Laura, it's like you took pages out of my journal. By the way, I have copious notes about all of these things, but I agree with you there. I feel like sometimes tuning out the noise and recognizing that what you feel might be an imposter syndrome and not truly what's going on, that's a really difficult, and it's a lifelong journey, I think, but it does get better as you progress. Plus, we had no business knowing what we know now when we were younger, right? That wasn't part of the journey. Like that, what we were not meant to know that at that time. Otherwise, we could have thrown off the whole matrix. That's how I tell myself anyway. But I really want to ask you if there's anything else that you would like to share that about your journey that really stands out to you. There's always little nuggets like that one, Laura, about just tuning out all of those negative voices. And I'll open it up to the panel, but Jennifer, I'll start with you if there's anything you want to share.
I mean, there were a couple things. I think the biggest thing for me to share is, as Charlotte talked about, sometimes you have to be your own representation, and that was something I decided to do. And I think back now, this is something I could have started doing when I was, 20 years old, 22 years old, but I waited just because there was no one that looked like me. So ultimately, you have to have that courage to be willing to be the first at something, just because at some point it turns into an excuse, just because, oh, no one looks like me doing it. And to me, that's the mindset that I had that ultimately led me on this journey. And, there were a couple things. I made the decision that I would be willing to be so good that they couldn't deny me because I was a woman or a Black female. That was the mindset that I had when I started on this journey to get to the NFL. And I thought that was a powerful personal mantra that I gained. And it was really big in my efforts to get here. And, how do you deal with your failures is so important. Make sure you fall forward when things happen, and because they're going to happen. Things aren't going to go your way. Things are going to be unsuccessful at times, but how do you handle those things and move forward? And those were two really big things for me along my journey.
Miss Charlotte, I'll go to you next. If you have anything you want to add.
I think this is such a powerful conversation because, I think about the comments that we all share, right? All of these experiences we all go through. And, I'm always so amazed that our biggest critic is actually the mirror. And what we see in the mirror and how we see ourselves is often our biggest hurdle. And trying to instill in ourselves that we do have the ability to do it. We do have the strength to do it. We do have the courage to do it. And give ourselves a break when we come up short. How can we get better the next day? And, my dad always used to tell me, he said, every day when you look in the mirror, ask yourself, are you doing everything you can to be the best that you can be? And are you doing everything you can to take your dreams and your goals and turn them into a reality? And if not, how can you change that? And I think that battle is so much within as much as it is without. And, we talk a lot about courage. And I think probably that the greatest framework that I actually have heard courage placed in, and this is recently, and I was visiting with a Medal of Honor recipient, General Pat Brady. And as you can imagine, Medal of Honor recipients are all about courage. But what he said was, we are not all born equal. We are not all born with opportunity. But what God has blessed us all with is an endless supply of courage. And every day we can call upon that courage to do greater things than we did the day before. And that has stuck with me, that is a universal blessing of God, is the ability to tap in to our courage. And where will that take us? And I think it's just so difficult sometimes for us to take that first step. But when we do, and then we start to build upon that, then that allows us to break through those barriers, allows us to turn out that noise that we hear, or face those demons that appear right in front of us and say, yeah, I'm different, but I'm every bit as good, if not better than you are. And I deserve this opportunity to be here.
I have chills, absolute chills. It is 100% accurate. And it's those affirmations that you have to continue to tell yourself every step along the way, because some days it will be easier than others to sort of pull yourself up and lead with courage. But as long as you keep those thoughts in mind, I wrote that one down. I will never forget that now. See, now that's sticking with me. That's how you pass it on. What we want to talk about next is, where do we go from here, right? Like, yes, this is great. And we've been able to sort of march in our path and stay true to it and believe in what we have. But there's still so much work to be done, especially for women, especially in sports. So Laura, I want to ask you here, where do you think we go from here? And you've done such a tremendous job with Galvanize in making sure that there's an opportunity and a space specifically for women in broadcast and sports broadcast to really hone in on what they can truly do. So in your mind, what is next, and how can we all join in on that?
I love the theme of courage right now, because we're talking about courage in yourself and trying to find that. But I think one of the greatest things for not just women in sports, but women in any male dominated industry or male prevalent industry, which is most industries, it's confidence in each other. It's confidence in other women, as we're talking right now about this great sisterhood on this panel and in life right now, and celebrating women in this business and every business. I think I spent so many years of my career looking at everybody else and looking at her path and looking at her path. And why did she get that job? Why didn't I get that job? Why wasn't I considered for that job? And then one day I woke up to a tweet alerting me, hey, you're the third longest tenured sideline reporter. And my instinct was to make an age joke that day when I first saw that somebody had kept track of that. And then I was so upset with myself because I thought, don't you dare make fun of this. Don't you dare use humor, because this is such a wonderful reminder. While I was so busy looking at everybody else's journey, I wasn't focusing on mine. I wasn't focusing on what I was creating and the career and the longevity I was building, because I was looking at everybody else. So I think my favorite thing about this generation right now, and to all you girls and young women who are watching this, your generation, you cheer other women on differently than we did. So Jennifer was talking about or I think it was Sarah talking about women are strong and women can play fast and using all these great words, but women can champion like nobody's business. And the stereotype that all of you hear about women being catty and women not supporting each other, I think that right now, this time in our life, we're seeing that women aren't competition for each other. We can champion each other and lift each other. And I want to make sure I say this to all the young girls watching this right now. I just spoke to a couple hundred women closer to my age last week, and the theme was power of sisterhood, and it was all Major League Baseball women, so very successful women, and all guys, girls. That's what most of us on this panel would all describe ourselves as. The girls who hung out with the guys, didn't have a lot of girlfriends, maybe, that we were in sports, so we're mostly that guy's girl. I don't trust women. And that was the room of women I was talking to, and talking about why you don't trust women. And when I said to them, can we unpack that? Why don't you? Let's actually answer that question. Why do you not trust women? And every answer that every woman gave, who again is closer to my age, said the age, something happened the age that all of you are right now. It was how they were treated in junior high school or in high school. And it was a reminder to me of how much it sticks with you, how girls treat girls. So my favorite thing is not just for this panel and for women already in this business, but for you girls, be good to each other. If you see a girl being left out or picked on, help her. She is going to remember that the rest of her life. And so will you, because again, you're going to be on panels one day talking about the power of sisterhood and talking about what women mean to you. And that starts at your age right now, how you treat each other. So I hope that, MJ, is where the change is happening, is for these young girls and these young women to look at each other and not go, how do I compete with you, but how do I team up with you? And how do I take on everything that's going to be coming our way? And I hope that's what's in their heads and their hearts right now.
Oh, no question. I mean, you better preach, Laura. Listen, I think so much when we see about this and as we discuss these things amongst ourselves and as we reach out to the next generation, is unpacking generations of that trauma, of that conditioning, to where there were so many exterior factors telling us you should behave like this and there can only be one. And it was all fallacies. I mean, it's not true. And my biggest thing is strength in numbers. When women get together, whoo, just move out of the way. Just get out of the way, because there's no stopping us, no question. So I want to be mindful of the time, and I want to make sure we get to the students who are with us, and because they have sent in some very insightful and very incredible questions. So I want to transition into that portion of it. And we have 3 students who have opportunities to ask the questions here. So I want to take some time and do that. So first student up is Camille Dizzen from Wingfield High School in Jackson, Mississippi. So we have that question up. Hi, Camille. She says, do you ever have moments where you were stressed or felt hopeless and felt like giving up? Girl, yesterday. If so, how do you push yourself to keep going and get where you are now? That question, it was for you, Laura. Go ahead.
I love that question. And I love at 16 years old, that's where Camille her head was, just being able to admit that, because exactly what MJ said. Yes, all the time. It was hard, and it still is hard. I think every one of us on this panel would say that it's not about not feeling that way anymore. It's about finding coping mechanisms, finding ways to make sure that when you feel it, you don't run from it, you don't ignore it, you talk about it, and you allow yourself to feel it. And so, as I said, I hid behind everybody else's story. So my life changed when I started focusing on my own. But I think I focused so much on my job and checking boxes, right? I want to cover Super Bowls. I want to go to the Olympics. And And all of a sudden I got to 40 years old, and I realized I had a lot of check boxes, and that was it. Check boxes didn't love me back like I thought they would. So I had to work on creating a life. I had to work on being more than my job. So I spent 20 years focusing on what I do. And then what changed was the last 10 years, I started focusing on who I am. And those two things are very different. So I ask myself all the time, what makes me happy? What lights me up? I do that still all the time. So if I feel sad, if I feel stuck, I look at that list constantly, and either one of two things happened. I got away from the things that light me up and I need to get back to them. Or sometimes new things make me happy. And I go, oh, I didn't even know that path was going to change me into or change into this direction. So everyone's going to ask you, Camille, for a very long time, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that answer probably will change a few times, as it should. But what I would like you all to think about is, who do I want to be when I grow up? I think the who is more important than the do, even though the world will tell you otherwise. So I think every time that I feel that frustration, or I feel sadness, or I feel stuck, it's always making sure that I turn inward and I don't try to stuff it down. I try to make sure that I'm paying attention to it, and I try to make sure that I'm figuring out what does make me happy. And I think, again, for a long time I wasn't paying attention to that, and looking at, why is she happy? Why is he happy? Why do they have this wonderful life? And instead of looking at, what do I need to do to add more happiness and joy to mine? And the answer was bigger than my job.
Check boxes don't love you back. I'm in a glass case
They
of
don't.
ocean. Oh my goodness. All right. The next question we have is from Alessandra Leila Santini. She's at Paul Revere Middle School in Los Angeles, California. And her question is, for Miss Charlotte, who has helped you along your life and career?
Oh, wow. Well, Alessandra, this is such a great question. And, I probably have answered it along the way today, but that it started for me at home. Clearly with my parents. And a lot of that was great love. Some of that was tough love. My parents are two completely different people. My father probably taught me passion and conviction, but my mom taught me compassion. And I think it is the combination of both that actually makes us whole. That yes, we can be driven and we can be, strong and we can be committed, but we need to be caring, we need to be authentic, we need to be aware, and honestly, we need to pay that forward. And I've always believed that I had the benefit of great support. And if I had the benefit of support and I had the conviction and the courage to turn my challenge into opportunity and found success from that and was able to take that elevator ride up, then I have the responsibility to send it back down for someone else to get on. And in doing so, that takes the ability to reach out, to identify with people. I love our conversation just a minute ago with Laura, that a lot of these things that we all get stressed. I think the importance is realizing that the things that affect us, actually we share with everyone. That those stresses, those commonalities are not just for women, they are also for men, that people get stressed. It is who actually shares that, who is vulnerable enough, like Laura, to own it, to admit it, and to want to help others work their way through it. And in that, surrounding yourself with people that support you and encourage you is where you build your team, and where you build your posse, so that you can, when you will have that misstep and that dark day, they're there to push you back out and lead you to the next step.
No question. You need that group, and lifting as you climb is another big part of what I heard there for sure. All right, the last question will be for Jennifer, and it was from Salome Johnson Harris. She's at McAuliffe Manual Middle School in Denver, Colorado. Apologies on butchering that. The question is, what are the best strategies you would suggest to persevere and stay focused between sports and school? Very good question here, Jennifer.
That is a very good question. I appreciate it, Salome, for asking me that. I think the biggest thing for young student athletes to stay focused is balance. And I think when I was able to play multiple sports while I was in school, I learned the importance of balance and how to balance my academics with my athletics. And my parents let me know at a very young age I can't have sports without my academics, and that was very important in my household. So the same mentality that I used to want to be good on the basketball court or the softball field, I use that same mentality in school. I wanted to be really good at everything that I did. And I always say you can't be a champion on the field and not a champion off the field. It kind of all goes hand in hand. And I think that's so important for young student athletes to realize is how important it is to be good academically. And now with the increased NCAA standards, it's important if you want to be a collegiate athlete to do a really good job. You can't waste time in your freshman year and then in your senior year you're scrambling because all of a sudden you're recruiting, you want to play in college. So I think it's so important to have that balance and maintain that same mentality, because a lot of the same traits that make you a really good athlete will make you a really good student as well, as far as your work ethic, your balance, and your drive to want to be good. And education is so important to me, and I think it should be important to everyone as we grow, because at some point, the athleticism goes away, the sports end for you, but what can you fall back onto? And I think it's so important to have that academic background to be strong in other areas as well.
It's not a fallback. It's in tandem. Everything has to work together. Amazing,
Yeah.
Jennifer.
Jay,
This
if I
has been yes,
Can I
please.
add, because I think this is really important. I loved Jennifer's comments, and I just have to have a huge plug for student athletes, and for the ability, one, for the balance, for being able to be a student and to be an athlete and what you're learning in the process. We have 20 people that work for us in sales to sell everything about the Dallas Cowboys. 10 are female, 10 are male, and 18 of them played high school sports. 18 of them were student athletes. And the reason why they make successful employees is they understand will, determination, let down, failure, getting back up, striving again, and have the courage to be able to do so and understand what it takes to balance in the world beyond sports. And I just want to encourage those who do both. Those skills are priceless. They are timeless, and they will be so beneficial to you as you move forward in your lives and in the careers that you choose.
No question. They are life lessons, literally. Thank you for that, Ms. Charlotte. Listen, we could go on and on and on, but of course, everybody does have to get back to work and back to class. So on behalf of Charlotte Jones, the Dallas Cowboys, and Character Playbook powered by Everfi, we want to thank you all, and of course, all of the women here today for sharing a piece of history. We hope that everyone here, all the students, enjoyed meeting these wonderful women today and feel inspired to make your own history and be the first to do many more great things. But before we say goodbye, Charlotte would like to leave us with a quote. I'll leave it to you, Charlotte.
Yes, so one of my favorite quotes that I think we all need to put on our refrigerator or on a sticky note on our computer is from Eleanor Roosevelt. And she said, "You must do the things you think you cannot do." Good luck to all of you, and thanks for joining us.
Incredible. Thank you again, everyone, and thank you to our incredible panel.